Okay, we got our next DIY project right here. Now you might be asking, what is this, Leanna? Well, it's going to be some headstones for Halloween. Just want to make some of my own DIY. This is just sitting here so it doesn't blow away, but it's 1.5 inch foam insulation. So we got that right here. And what we're gonna do is we are going to cut this into a headstone. And before we get into this, I just want to give this little disclaimer. We're not doing this to save money. You know, we're going to make our own headstones and we're going to save money on our graveyard for Halloween. No, that's not how this works. Actually, you might end up spending more money in the long run because there's a lot of tools and things that you might not have that you're going to have to go out and buy. The foam core itself costs about $50 just for the board. So, you know, you're talking putting some money and a little bit of an investment, but the end product is a more customized quality product than the thing that you would buy in the store. I mean, you're going to have your own unique headstones. So I know there's a lot of how-tos out there. Just be wary that when you watch those, I mean, these people are spending hundreds of dollars to do these projects. So it's very costly to make some of these projects. Even something just as simple as this, I had to go out and spend a couple $100 just so I can make these. But in the end, I'm going to have my own unique customized headstones, which will be pretty cool. Nobody else in my neighborhood is going to have that. I'll show you guys a headstone I made already. I made this one about 2 years ago, and I made a big mistake on making this one because I only bought 1/2 inch foam insulation. So once it got out there in the wind, the little cross cracked off, but it was a great learning experience. I've seen a lot of people use 2-inch foam. I don't think that's necessary. I think this should probably do the job. So we're going to get to making that. Okay, part 2. We got a template. I already tried cutting something out. It went not good. We got tape, coffee, and that's all we need. And this lovely jigsaw that I just bought for $24 from Walmart with these Bosch blades that are great for cutting foam, but we'll get into that. Carrying on, let's set this up. I just drew this in Illustrator. You don't have to do this, but I did. Shit, I probably should have numbered these pieces, huh? Yeah, that would have made my life easier. I'm gonna put this together. I'll be right back. Okay, I got it put together after a little finagling. So the next step is going to be lining this up. Now, if you don't have the ability to do what I did here, which is basically going in Illustrator and just tracing an image that I found online, you can just freehand it using shapes, rulers. I did that yesterday. We'll go take a look at that. All right, so I did this one yesterday. It's kind of a mess, but I think I still might use it. It was kind of a test piece, but I think it's still usable because this isn't perfection here. This is something that's going to end up getting aged and worn looking. But what happened here was, as you could see my lines here, I took a bucket cap, made a circle. I took rulers and I just, made the cross. I took another bucket cap, actually a pizza pan that I had, and I traced that and then just went straight lines down from a certain point. And I freehanded this, and as you can see, it's not the most even, but that's okay because we're going for the worn look. So as I back out here, you can see it doesn't look that bad from far away. So I still think I'm gonna go with that one. Problem with this one was I cut it with a hot knife that I got from Harbor Freight, and you see it kind of burns and melts, and I'm not a big fan of that. You could cut this with a razor blade, or you could cut it with this jigsaw, but we'll get into that in a moment. Now let's get back to our pattern. Okay, very important. We are gonna cut this out and then we're gonna trace it. So we wanna make sure that we have all the joints on the inside taped together so that it stays together, because of course my printer cut out at the integral part here where it all meets up. So yeah, that sucks. Okay, and since I'm a little anal sometimes, I am going to be using these cutting mats underneath and a razor blade to cut this out. If I can find my razor blade, which I thought I brought out here, just to make sure it's precise. So I'll use my ruler and I will cut it that way. Okay, I apologize here. I didn't get the very best footage of me cutting this out. And it's all not that interesting to watch anyway, but I just basically cut the outline out and I'll show you that right now. So I went ahead, I lined this up with the bottom and I traced it with a Sharpie marker. So now, if I can get my nails under it, we don't need our template anymore. But I'm still gonna save this just in case I ever wanna make another one. This is where the fun part comes in. I went to Walmart. I bought this little jigsaw. It was $22. And I ordered online these blades. Now you have to specifically get these. They're for soft materials by Bosch. I got them on Amazon and I could link them below. And this is going to be the cleanest cut that you're gonna get. Working with the, like a razor blade, especially with this 1.5 inch thickness is hard. So the next step is going to be cutting this out. Wish me luck. Okay, so I sped this up because there's no need to watch me, sawing this out and constantly looking to see if I hit the table because I was super nervous that I was going to hit the table with this thing. So I just cut it out. This blade was amazing, and this little $22 jigsaw from Walmart, unbelievable for $22. I mean, for projects like this, well worth it. I can't speak on it for woodworking projects, but for cutting this foam, holy moly, it's great. It's amazing. So, came out pretty good. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is move on to this little machine right here, which I picked up at Harbor Freight. It's a hand router. And what it does is it routes the edge, okay? So that's the type of edge we're looking at right there to having, just like on the other one. So did a little practice on this piece just to see if it was coming out the right way. So that's the next step. Okay, so again, I didn't get the best footage of me doing this, but you could see I just kind of traced the outline with the router, went around the edge there, and it just gave it that nice little beveled look to make it look a little more realistic. This is what we got. Nice edge. Kind of messed up right there because I stepped on the cord, but that's all right. It doesn't matter. We're going to rough up some of the spots anyway because we kind of want it to look a little old and worn down. So I think this came out great. I like the way this looks, and the next step now is going to be planning out our design for the letters and stuff like that. Okay, so to make our lettering, I bought this removable vinyl from Michael's. Now, you definitely want to get removable vinyl. I had some at home, but I figured this was $3, so I didn't mind wasting it and throwing it away. Not the best vinyl, not going to lie here. I've worked with vinyl for my whole, adult life, and this one was not the best. But it worked good enough for the purposes that I needed it for, which was just to make a stencil with the lettering. So I went into Illustrator. I didn't film it, but this is my layout. I kept this one pretty simple just for the fact that, I'm hand engraving this and I didn't want to get too crazy with too much lettering because it would be a pain in the butt. But one thing to keep in mind when you're doing this, whether you're using a vinyl cutter like I did, right? Like your Cricut, or you could buy stencils in the store, letter stencils. You could freehand it and draw your own letters on there. It doesn't matter. But one thing to keep in mind is that you want to make sure that the strokes of your letter, meaning the width of the lines in your letter, are going to be the same size as the bit that you're using to engrave. Now, that probably doesn't make sense right this second, but it will in a minute. So if it's too thick, right, or too thin rather, your letters are going to get a little messed up, and I kind of ran into that problem. So this was just a very simple layout. Here lies buried alive. I've seen people do it with the D and then the apostrophe live. I didn't like the way that looked. So buried alive, basically. Okay, so I prepped everything off camera and I basically weeded out the letters. Now, normally when you do vinyl, you weed out the opposite, but because we're using this as a stencil, you want to weed out the letters. I also had to make these boxes to kind of line everything up because the way that the Cricut works, there's like an 11-inch, I don't know, border that you can't cut past. So I had to cut it in pieces. And so what I did was a little bit of a sign maker's trick there is I put these boxes, so each box lines up to the next box. Okay, so I placed the first one. I didn't, really measure it out or do anything too precise, but I placed the first one on top, and then from there everything lines up. You know what I'm saying? So it all lines up after that. So each box touches the next box. So that was, my way of keeping the letters all aligned. Now you could get really picky and precise and, draw lines and center lines and everything like that. But, this is for Halloween. It's going to be out for 30 days. I don't need it to be, absolutely perfect. Here's another little sign shop trick. We're just going to tape this down here on the edge. It would probably be better to put tape all across it. So let's do that actually. Just so that it doesn't wobble. And here's how this works. We're going to peel this back, okay? This way we make sure it's in the right spot, of course. Okay, so I sped this up a little just because the backing was giving me a little bit of trouble as I was peeling it. So as you can see, I ripped a couple of pieces. This Cricut removable vinyl was terrible, but I'm showing you guys tricks from the sign shop. This is a great little way to make sure that everything's on straight and that you're putting it and placing it in the right place. And then as long as you get the top one placed right, everything else is going to line up afterwards because we made boxes around everything to make sure that they lined up perfectly. You want to grab it, and we always want to work from the center out, okay? Like this. Flip, 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 flip. And this is how you lay down sheets of vinyl, okay? I worked in a sign shop for years. I just want to give it one last squeegee, but we're always working from the center out. Okay, and so here you could see me peeling back the transfer tape. We're going to leave it like that, and now I'm going to line up the boxes with each box. So you'll see that they touch, and I did that intentionally. I drew the boxes so that they would touch one another. And it just saves you so much trouble. You don't have to line everything up perfectly. So I laid down the rest of the vinyl. It was giving me a little bit of trouble with the letters sticking. I think my transfer tape is old. I've had it for years now. So, but you'll see I lay it all down, and then we move on to the next step. Okay, so the next step is taking a Sharpie marker and filling in the letters. This way, when we peel the vinyl off, the letters will still be there, thusly, using the vinyl as a stencil. Okay, so we got our words all here, okay? Now, here's the next tool that you're probably going to need that you might not have, and that is this Dremel bit. Okay, so they make several of these bits. It's the carving engraving bit, and it comes in many different sizes. I have it in 2 different sizes, this bigger one and then the smaller one, which is the one that I used for this project. And then we're going to need this. Okay, and you're also going to need this attachment, which costs about $20. And what this does is basically turns your Dremel into a router. So it kind of stabilizes it so you could hold it upright. So this attaches to the Dremel, and you'll see how I use it in a second. So basically what you want to do is you want to unscrew, there's this little piece that comes off the end of the Dremel, and you want to screw in your bits first and get them nice and tight in there. And you want to leave it sticking out a little more than normal. And then you put this piece into where that other piece was that you took off. It's kind of hard to explain, but when all is said and done, it looks like this. And that's it all assembled. And what you see me doing here is just taking a test piece, and I'm just kind of testing the depth and making adjustments on the Dremel just to make sure that it's not going too deep. You don't want it too deep because it's gonna, you'll lose the letters. So you got to kind of play around with this thing to make sure that you have it at the right depth for cutting. And once I found a depth that I was comfortable with, I started to engrave my letters. Now you want to go really slow on a low speed. You don't want to go too fast, otherwise it'll go crazy. And it's a little hard for me to use because I'm left-handed, and the Dremel is really made for right-handed, but that's a whole different story. But as you can see, I got the B done, and I'm going to show you guys a better view of how it looks when you're looking through the little window. Okay, so I'm just showing you guys here. I hold my thumb in front of it, and that is just to kind of steady it. It's easier if you do it with two hands. And yes, my nails need a fill. But I'm going to show you here without my thumb in the way, and you guys will get a better kind of view of what's going on in there. I would definitely suggest not doing this with the one hand like this, but, you know, I just wanted you guys to kind of see how the material's getting cut away. All right, so we got the letters all done here. I messed up a little bit in my design because, see, the problem was with these letters, the stroke of them was so thin that the router bit I used looks like that. That one was a little too wide for the letters, but probably would have worked now that I'm looking at it. I don't know. So I used this drill bit that comes standard with the Dremel. So next thing I'm doing though is I'm going to do these lines, but I wanted them to have a kind of rounded appearance to them. So I'm using the router bit. You see how it has that kind of rounded thing? So I'm hoping it's going to leave a decorative kind of look. But again, always keep a test piece handy so that we can see how it looks. Okay, and this is why it's important to always do tests like this, because I noticed when I turned the router on, there was like a little kickback, just like when you're, you know, shooting a gun or something. There's a little kickback, and so it moves a little bit, and it was leaving this weird kind of circle thing on the end. So I was, you know, here you just see me doing a couple of tests, kind of trying to figure out how to stop that from happening. So, and I'm making adjustments, you know, with the depth to make sure that it's not too deep and it's not too shallow. So you really do need test piece always to play around and just make sure that things are right before, you know, you start cutting things. What do they say? Measure twice, cut once. And then my phone ran out of space, so you don't see me actually cutting the lines. Okay, I just routed these two lines. I'm not crazy about the way they came out, but I ran out of storage while I was filming, so I don't even know how much of that I actually got on here. But here comes the fun part, okay? I had this thing laying around that I bought from Michael's years ago, so I'm gonna glue that up there. I think it'll look kind of cool. Once it's painted, it'll give it like a little, you know, extra pizzazz. But the other thing we're gonna do is we're gonna distress things, and one of the ways we're gonna do that is with this. So this is a wood burning tool that I got from Harbor Freight, and it heats up at the end. It could be used as a soldering iron as well. Again, I'm gonna let it heat up for a minute, but you wanna crack this sheet. So I'm gonna show you guys once this heats up what we're gonna do. It's quite cool. This thing heats up, and we're gonna use this side for practice. And what it does is it melts. So you kind of wanna practice with it a little bit because we're gonna make some cracks and stuff. So you kind of wanna, you know, figure it out a little bit. And so that's exactly what you see me doing here, is just kind of playing around with it to get the look of the cracks right. And then I'm showing you that you could also make cracks with an X-Acto knife. I personally don't like doing it this way. You kind of carve it out and then chip it out. So I went back to doing this. All right, I find this a little easier to do when it's kind of on an angle. So let's go to some places where, you know, I feel like we're gonna have some natural cracking. I'm okay with that one right there. So again, I just kind of went around in some random spots and made some cracks. You know, you don't want to overdo it, but I made a big one across the bottom here, and then just a couple coming off the side. And then we're going to move on to the next step of distressing this. This part is pretty cool. You are going to need a heat gun. You could use a torch, but I prefer the heat gun. And some water. Now, I can't find a proper spray bottle, so I'm using my plant mister and hoping for the best. You kind of want to wet this down. Okay. Give it a nice sweating. There's some nice droplets on here. We're going to hit it with the heat gun on low. And we'll see what's going to happen here. Maybe we need it on high. I think I need a new heat gun. Mine's not really working too great. You see it's starting to distress a little bit. These spots. You see how it's starting to wrinkle up? That's what we're looking for right there. That's exactly what we're looking for. Okay, so since nobody wants to listen to basically a blow dryer, I sped this up and I'm just showing you guys that I was kind of just hitting it in different areas to give it that rocky looking texture. Now, you want to avoid the letters. You don't want to go right directly over the letters because it's going to kind of warp them a little bit. And also, you want to keep the thing moving in like a circular motion. You don't want to hold it in one spot for too long. You want to keep it constantly moving. Okay, there's two more things you could actually do. So this is a shore form tool, I think it's called. It's kind of like a cheese grater. Actually, it's called a rasp. I have no idea where I got shore form from. And you could take this, and I'll show you what it does on this test piece, and just kind of rough the edges up a little bit. And you see it gives that kind of chipped out look. So you can do that. And I just grabbed this thing too, which is for pedicures. I think I got this at the Dollar Tree years ago. And it kind of does the same thing. Kind of just, you know, roughs it up a little bit. So, could use either one. I'm going to go with this one. And just kind of get in there a little bit. Kind of like somebody took a chink out of it on the side. I'll do this one. And again, I just kind of went around the edges in various spots, just, you know, taking a little bit away just to kind of make it look like it's aged and it's old and it's been worn out and chipped and the weather got to it. And the next thing I did was I just glued that little piece onto the top. And if you're gluing anything, whether it's styrofoam to styrofoam or whatever it is to styrofoam, my Loctite bottle got a little messed up. It was squeezing out the side. So anyway, if you're gluing anything to this, just make sure the glue, whatever you're using, is safe for foam, because you know, some glues will eat away at the foam. This glue is Loctite silicone, so it's not going to eat away at the foam. But I ran into a little bit of a problem, and I'm going to show you guys that now. All right, I moved into the garage temporarily here just to show you guys what happened. My neighbors got the landscapers there, so it's kind of loud outside. But I had these weird lines in this foam. I'm not really sure why that is. You guys see? And this one, I really melted it open, and I'm not really crazy about the way it looks. So I took a little joint compound or spackle, whatever you would use to, you know, spackle, and I kind of filled in the lines. And once it dried fully, you see how I kind of think I might have to just go back in and do one more little coat. And I messed the R up there when I was showing you guys, but that's okay. Anyway, yeah, so I did a little bit of spackling and then I just sanded it down. So I'm going to continue doing that, let it dry, and then we'll come back and do the next step. I filled it up one more time so you can see it's pink, and it's going to turn white when it's dry. So I don't know if this is going to work, but it was worth a shot. Okay, the next step. We got some dry lock paint. We got a brush. We covered our surface. And this is the best tool for opening paint up. Has a sandy kind of base to it. You could probably add, I don't know, some kind of sand to regular paint. I don't think styrofoam really needs to be waterproof necessarily, but this needs a good start. Oh yeah. Okay, so I mixed up the paint. You really want to make sure this stuff is mixed good. Now, this is another expensive part of the project because dry lock is pretty expensive. It costs about $40 or so a can. It's gonna waterproof it, and it's also gonna give it a little bit of a sandy texture. So it'll make it look more like stone. And just keep in mind that this stuff is super thick. So when you're going over the letters, you want to, do that very lightly because you don't want it to fill your letters in and then dry like that. And then when we go to, add our special effects paint, it's going to, we're not going to see our letters. So what I did here was I painted over the letters and then I had to kind of go back in and pull out some of the paint with another paintbrush. And this is how it looked when I was done with my first coat. And then I realized something when I was done doing this, that I forgot about how I was going to mount this thing. And so I'm going to show you guys that. So I flipped the piece over once it was, dry enough. And you see my little crazy setup over here. I have a vacuum set up. And what I'm going to do is I took this little piece of PVC pipe that I had laying around. And I'm going to route out a little line there. And that's why I have the vacuum set up, just so that it pulls in the dust, because I was covered in styrofoam for at least 2 days here. So I just routed this little line in the back of this, and basically what that did was made a little inlay so we could fit the pipe in there. And that is what we're going to use to mount it. You could use rebar or conduit, or even I use these threaded rods that my husband gets from work, and I'm going to stick that in the ground and as a stake, and then slide the pole over it. Okay, so I wanted to glue this in, so I'm using this Loctite silicone glue because it doesn't eat the foam, and my tube was a little messed up and busted, so that's why you see me using a popsicle stick. But anyway, after I did that, I set the pipe in there and I let it dry for a little bit, and I was going to cover it with spray insulation, like that foam insulation, but I decided against that because I ended up using this other glue that I have, which you'll see in a second. And that glue is it ain't going anywhere. So I don't think I'm going to use the spray foam. That's optional. I've seen people use the spray foam to adhere the pipe into the back of this thing. So I use this glue, and you can find it in the automotive section. And it works really well. And right now it feels really sturdy and like it's not going to go anywhere. So I feel like this is just good enough. So we're going to finish painting this and then we're almost done. Okay. So just to give you guys an idea of how this is going to work, I stood this up, made a little makeshift thing, but this is the basic concept. You got a piece of something, sticking through the ground, and the pole just kind of slides right over it. So that's how it's going to stand up in the end. Okay, and I painted the front and back, and so now it's time to add what I like to call the special effects paint. And I'm going to show you guys real quick. We're going to run through it and we'll be done. Of paint colors. So I got some black, I got metallic, I got this light gray color. I've even got a brown gel stain just to see how that works. Green and some white and more metallic. And this plate, because stone is a little metallic looking, especially with granite. This is my palette right here. I got myself a chip brush, some water, and enjoy this beautiful little Doberman sighting. He's pacing around. He doesn't know what to do with himself. But I'm going to show you guys real quick how I do this. And it's really just a matter of wetting everything down and then going in with different colors. You really have to experiment. It's kind of hard to film this whole entire thing, especially because my lighting wasn't so good right here. But I'm basically, I'm wetting this down. I'm going around and I'm just kind of adding black and all different washes of color. You don't want to put the paint directly on. And if you do, you got to blend it out with water because it's going to leave brush strokes. And, stone, if you look at it, doesn't really have brush strokes on it. So it's really just a matter of, layering different colors, starting with dark and then going to the kind of lighter ones. But you just want to make sure that you blend everything out. So I keep constantly putting my brush in the water to, blend everything out a little bit. And then I do a little dry brushing in between. And, you really can't mess this up. Whatever you don't like, you could always just kind of paint over it. So there really is no rules to this. One thing that I did do was I took some black and I kind of filled the letters in, and then I just kind of blended out around them without trying to get the brush in there. It was hard to get the paint to stay in the letters, but you just got to work around with it. It takes a little while. I mean, you could literally mess with this thing the entire day if you wanted to. So I added a little white to the top and some light gray to just make all that detail kind of pop out. And I got a little lost in the painting here, so I didn't film the whole process, which you don't want to watch it because it took me like an hour or two. But anyway, just keep messing around with it until you get an effect that you like. And so here is the big reveal. All right, folks, and this is it. This is the big reveal. I'm pretty happy with the paint job. You could kind of just sit around painting this all day, just kind of messing around with the colors. But this is the finished piece. Didn't worry too much about the back, but I think it looks pretty damn good. And yeah, it took some time, but I have a guy who looks like he's half buried. So when he goes in the grave over here, which I think I'm going to move him over here because we're trying to fill in this flower bed. And it kind of looks a little dug up over here, and I kind of like it for a graveyard compared to the rest of my grass. I think it's going to look really cool. So this is my DIY gravestone. If you guys want more videos like this, I got more projects coming up. And don't forget to check out my website, www.concretejunglehomedecor.com. Link will be below. See you guys later.